2. Welcome to Health Hangouts with Amanda. For those of you who don't know what this video series is all about, we are releasing one video per day for the duration of time that we are government mandated to stay inside. We're hoping to spread strength, love, and hope to those of you out there who perhaps are struggling, do not know how to ask for help, or are not asking for help for whatever reason. And so the idea behind these videos is to say, here are some ideas for you to integrate in your life that may be helpful for, aiding you in braving the storm through this. And so every day we have a different interviewee, and so today we have Nicole Powell with us. Hi, Nicole.
Hi, thanks for having me, Amanda.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. This is all of this is volunteer time, and so from the bottom of my heart, I certainly appreciate and want to share that I appreciate that you are here on a volunteer basis. I'm really grateful for that, and I know that there are many listeners who are also grateful for that. We do have, more and more we're seeing people who are tapping into these videos and finding benefit in them. And so so I'm excited to fulfill my promise of one video per day. So of course, anybody who does come forward and say, yeah, I'd love to do an interview, it's helpful on this end to fulfill that promise. So thank you so much. Nicole and I have known each other for about 6 years.
About that, I think it's 2014 or something. Yeah.
And so, Nicole and I met at a addiction treatment center on the island. And then from there have maintained a connection on different levels. And so Nicole comes to us as a spiritual medium. And as I've watched, I've worked with Nicole. I've encouraged other people I know personally and professionally to see Nicole for their own various reasons. And it's been great to maintain a connection with you, Nicole, for those reasons. It's just been amazing. Like when you meet somebody, you just never know what a connection can bring, and it's really natural. We didn't create any of this. It's just been in front of us, and then we either take it or we don't. And I'm glad we've stayed connected over the years.
Me too.
Most certainly. So we're here to talk about how you've been personally and professionally affected by the pandemic, and then at the end, I am going to ask you to sum up your version of the conversation, just for folks to hear, what you're doing to assist yourself in braving the pandemic, whatever that means for you. So I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce yourself, and you can talk about other things that you're doing. And I've seen, on Facebook, you're doing you do collaboration with others, and you do a lot of group things, and it's pretty incredible what you're up to from a Facebook point of view. So so please, just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'm just going to ask you a bunch of questions.
Sure. So as Amanda said, my name is Nicole Powell, and I'm from here on Vancouver Island. And for the past 5 years, I've worked on Vancouver Island as a spiritualist medium. And so that is working privately with people in private practice, doing both energy work, mediumship, as well as intuitive guidance for clients. I also run circles, and I'm also a student minister up in Nanaimo at Two Worlds Spiritualist Church. So I offer services there as well. I keep my hands full quite a bit, but something that has been definitely I've noticed a shift for me is being able to take my energy back. And over the past few years, I've been quite involved within the community, working a lot on the road, internationally in Europe as well as here. And I found that my energy actually ran thin quite a bit. And I was at a point in my career where I was starting to wonder if I could keep going at this level. I noticed that life was speeding up really fast, and that I had so many things going on. And so when the pandemic hit, it was actually for me a huge sigh of relief of how could I really, collect and pull myself back into my own life in my home, as well as find a way where I can begin to work more virtually and actually bring back my happiness as well. Because I've been wanting more time to myself. And as working as a medium, I was finding that I was, giving so much outsource and so much output, but I wasn't having enough to fill my own spirit and fill my own soul as well. So I was starting to get quite drained. And we know, and working in healthcare and any kind of healthcare practitioner, it's very easy to get susceptible to burnout as well.
Yes.
And so in a matter of 1 week, I radically shifted my business completely virtually online. So I converted my classes to online Zoom meetings, and I moved all my appointments to working online on Zoom or FaceTime or Skype, whatever people had available. And I noticed that over the weeks that this happened, that I was actually starting to feel more and more full within myself. And I was having more time to do other things. And I was actually becoming more in tune with my body, mind, spirit. And I was actually finding my skills were increasing as well. So that was actually really interesting for me. So for me personally, I feel like I've been positively affected since the pandemic. In the sense that I've been able to take back my power and spend more time connecting with self. But also I've been finding that it's allowing me more room to connect with, you know, my heritage or my ancestry, of recognizing that this is too what my loved ones in spirit had been through like the war or the Spanish flu or things in the past. And I was able to spend more time in connection to maybe feeling fulfilled with their lives and how they had lived, and now what we are living through at this time as well. I was definitely experiencing moments of feeling like, oh God, how am I going to fill this time? And so I had to make a radical shift of, all right, what could I commit to so that I know that I can stay afloat and I can keep my mental health strong. And one thing that I did was that I started doing yoga the day the pandemic hit, when we went into lockdown, meaning that we were no longer able to see clients in person. And I've been doing yoga every single day on YouTube, doing 30-day challenges. So I'm on my second 30-day challenge. I think I'm on like day 50 or something like that. And I do find I'm getting more flexible. I'm getting more in tune. I feel like I have more energy in my life again. And the other thing as well is that my husband and I decided that we wouldn't eat out. So we've made every single meal at home, and we've made more of a commitment to our own health and being able to cook our own food so that we can still have that connection to using our hands. Because I find when working online that it's almost like you get so sucked in this virtual world, you forget all about, you know, the 3D world outside.
Oh, that's wonderful. So, you know, a lot of people have had to change over, of course, whether they were working for somebody or working for themselves in a, you know, within a brick and mortar building or practice, however you want to say it, and they've had to rapidly shift to digital services. And so I'm interested to hear a little bit more about the attitude you show up with here is really beautiful, in the sense of like, this was a gift.
Yeah.
The fact that I was, you know, these are my words, but I was forced into this lockdown, just like all of us were. And I'm taking this as a gift, because there are a lot of people that I've talked to who have said, I didn't want this, and I don't want this now. You know, I don't like any of this. And they become kind of gridlocked, if you will, into their own sadness or their own struggle. And so, you know, similar to what you might have been going through, and somebody else might have been going through, depending on the viewpoint, we can go either which way, saying this is really positive for these reasons, and over here it's like, well, this is really not so positive for these reasons. And so I think it comes back to, you know, acceptance of what is, and being able to embrace, because what we don't know is how things are going to impact us. Just like I said in the beginning, when you meet someone, you don't know what that's going to look like. There are forces outside of our control that hand us situations, and what we do with that is really up to us. So we have the power, I believe, to look at it from different vantage points and say, wow, like, this might not be ideal, but I'm finding it very valuable for these reasons. And then if we feed our lives with positivity, that's generally what we see compound, and same on the other side, right? So I'm interested to hear more about the attitude you show up with, because we didn't know this was happening. And so it sounds like you were flowing through what you were forced to do something with it, and you were flowing through that. Is what it sounds like.
You know, it was interesting because I believe the months beforehand, Spirit was almost prepping me for this. You could call that the universe, or, you know, whatever higher power you have. But I had this feeling like in January, I'd got the flu. So I was out for 2 weeks, and then I got a second-degree burn. So I wasn't able to see people, and I had this big mark on my arm. So it was almost like the universe was already starting to slow me down. And I remember at the time being like, what's going on? Every time I go to leave my house, something happens, my car, like the tire goes flat. And I just kept hearing this feeling, stop. Like, could you just please stop? Like, you're wired, you're hurting yourself, you're getting sick. These are all the symptoms of like, slow down. And, you can't be, helpful to anybody else if you're going to be falling apart yourself. So that was my first sign. It started to happen in January for me. And then I started to get these feelings and these insights feeding into me that I should start to switch my business online. And I was thinking, oh, we can't just do that overnight. I mean, this is a process that could take years, And so I was starting to think about it. I was actually thinking about you, Amanda, and your business, how you created strength counseling all online. And I was actually quite looking up to that and thinking of how could I move my business model online as well. And so when things started to happen and symptoms were starting to show, I had this gut feeling. It was like, we are going to have to do this, and we're going to have to do this like now, like overnight. So I remember seeing clients on Wednesday, took Thursday off, and by Friday it was like, okay, we're going radical. We're making this dramatic shift. By Monday, we're 100% virtual.
Wow.
And the biggest struggle I found was people pleasing, actually. It was like, oh, come on, I've had this appointment booked for months. Can you just let me see the person? I'll respect your social distancing, or can I meet you outside, or can I meet you in a park, or this or that. And I found that I had to keep going back to myself of trusting my intuition of going, no, we have to respect the rules of government and respect the rules of the authorities, but as well as what was my intuition saying in that moment. And so it was hard for me to be able to create those boundaries and be able to say no to people, even though and let people down. But I also felt that this was all for the benefit of the good. And when that whole movement happened of stay the F home and stuff like that on Facebook, it was almost like I felt like I had to be a leader in the community of stopping first and just allowing that to flow, and so that everybody else could kind of get into that rhythm as well. So I was actually excited for the challenge. I remember being completely wired. Like, I would spend hours and hours and hours changing my whole website, contacting every client I had booked over the next 2 months, telling them I was moving online, doing this, doing that. I was getting in contact with all sorts of people, moving my classes online. I was canceling things in the future. Any event I had booked from now till December, it was cancel, 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 cancel. And I just remember having this virtual high as well. I was just like, oh my gosh, this was intense. And I had no idea if it was going to work out. I had no idea how long we were going to be in lockdown. But I also had this feeling that if I didn't do it now, it was like sink or swim. So it was almost like, do you want to adapt with the times that are happening? Or do you want to hold that resistance and not be able to let go as well? I did notice the grief start to crack up. It's almost like when someone passes, the first thing you want to do is get their funeral going, and that you don't really feel anything. And it's almost like you're disconnected to your body a little bit. And it's like weeks later, then the grief starts to sink in. I realized I was definitely one of those people. I noticed that with friendships, they were wondering why I was acting so okay with everything. They're like, you just seem like too fine. Something's wrong. You're too fine with everything. And I did notice about a month into it, I believe it was around Easter weekend or something like that. It was like everything hit me that, whoa, we are creating a new world, and that this isn't necessarily something that we're going back to the old ways or things how they used to be. And so I did spend Easter weekend feeling into the grief of it and just the loss of the old world. But something that really kept me going was knowing that we were doing this for Mother Earth, because I feel that she was starting to heal. And something I noticed was that by all those clients I stopped from maybe coming in person, that imagine our carbon blueprint of all the things that we were saving in gas. Right? And things about traveling and stuff. I was like, oh my gosh, just by me making that one shift, all that gas on the island has been saved. And I was like, and if I can make that difference, and I can do that for Mother Earth, then I know I could do this for her. And that's my mission at this moment. So that's what really helped me stay in the light.
Well, and I imagine, well, I don't know, but I imagine you've heard reports of how this pandemic has helped Mother Earth, right? Like, and looking at the scans of CO2 emissions, and I don't know, the ozone layer and what's happening there, and pollution levels. It's incredible in the rivers and the oceans, and it's unbelievable from the reports that I've seen and the videos I'm watching and pictures. So you see Beijing before and after.
Yeah.
with 1 month of like this lockdown is incredible. You can see for, San Diego, you can see far and wide, and it's
Mhm.
amazing what's happening. So what a beautiful gift that is. Some people say, oh, this was nature's way of punishing us for how much we have abused it, and
Yeah.
whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it's definitely a great benefit, and I hope people can see that, and take a look at what our footprint has been
Mm-hmm.
on the earth, and how important it is to care about that,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you talk a bit more about the grief that you started to tap into and how you navigated that?
Yeah. The most important thing, I had to identify it into myself. So I couldn't say, oh, I'm picking up on the collective grief, because I remember feeling into that a lot. People were saying that. It's like, this isn't mine, this is the collective. And so I really had to see how it was affecting me, my grief. I go to Europe every fall, and this year that's been cut out indefinitely. There's also lots of things I have going on my business that I would do every fall, and all that's been cut out. So there was a grief of loss, in the sense of how is this going to affect maybe my friendships in the future, my connection to family in the future, socialize moving forward. There was a bit of grief in the sense of like, there was some things I didn't know about myself, that I'm actually like a massive introvert. Like, I realized I could be one of those people that lives on a remote island and could go weeks without seeing people. And I didn't know that about myself, because I had never given myself that permission before. And so there was a grief of, oh, I didn't know I was wearing that mask. I didn't know, as that, showing up, being that public figure, that was a role I was playing. And so that started to fall off of me as well. And started going back to my true nature of who I was, that maybe as I was a child, and reconnecting to that version of myself before I, stepped in this profession as well. Yeah.
Mhm. Wow, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just going to put out there just a technical piece here, that we're having a slowed connection or a freezing that's happening. And so it's good now, but it does come in and out. I've heard everything you've said, just the video freezes once in a while. So I don't know that there's anything that we, aside from changing internet connection servers, or maybe I don't know if it's on my end or yours. So I think it's okay for now, but I just want to put that out there, that in the event that there is a kind of a connection failure, we'll just regroup and come back. Or what you might find is I'll stop my video, or if you stop your video, it can catch up, which I imagine you're familiar with. But yeah, so I just want to put out there that's happening. But so if you see my video disappear, it's in essence attempting to make the connection a bit more fluid.
Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah, you're welcome. So in terms of the business side, you've been practicing for how long now?
About 5.5 years full time, and 7 years total. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and of course, dominantly in person. In fact, I don't know if you even. Yeah, I think some of the people that I've sent your way, they've lived in different areas, and you have done digital services for them. So you were somewhat familiar prior to the pandemic hitting, and now you're becoming more and more familiar with the digital side. In fact, before we hit record, and perhaps you can clarify this for me, but I wonder if there's a possibility you'll return to just in person, or if you would maintain the digital aspect, because now you're starting to see people who are far and wide. So like, even if you did start seeing people in person again, that's it's not going to, can imagine it's going to go totally back to that. So it sounds like it's been very valuable for you to have that guidance of whatever universal force or spiritual force was kind of saying to you, slow down and then take a look at this. Do you anticipate that you will continue using the digital way of connecting as time goes on?
Yeah, so over the past 5 years, I grew my practice, and I think I got to about 35-40% online and virtual. And I was really starting to love that, and I was hoping it to get up to about 50%. And then when the pandemic happened, obviously it did a full switch. The first couple weeks, it was, there was all the technical glitches and there was the discomfort of people being maybe new to an online platform and their discomfort of like, ooh, I don't know if I like this or if this is going to work. So I was really uncertain if this was something that was going to work long term. But over the weeks, I've been finding that people are getting more comfortable with, online platforms, that they are feeling more safe in this kind of setting. And I've actually started to enjoy it more because my sensitivity of being able to read other people, I was starting to find was getting overwhelming when I was in the same room as them. And being able to realize that when I connect this way, I have a bit more control of my own energy and my own boundaries as well. And that with there being no such thing as time or space, that connection through online, I found just as effective as in person. I do know that there's obviously lots of people that prefer to do things in person. And so for my existing clients, I'll definitely honor it for them if that's a preferred method or if they've never adapted over to social media or online platforms. But I would, for my future practice, be moving forward, advertising my services as online as well as my website online, and hoping that this would be the way of the future. But I also feel that this is the way Spirit has been guiding me and saying that this is the way of the future. This is how we, watch how much we're using gas and our carbon blueprint and things like that. So I'm quite hopeful that this will be a great way for us all moving forward as well.
I've had questions about connecting with clients online versus connecting with them in person. And as I imagine most people watching these videos understand that we provide counseling as a, family support, individual support, couple support, group support. We do everything online. And I've had criticisms in the past saying, well, you can't possibly do as good of a job digitally as you can do in person. And there are limitations, certainly, but what we have found is that it can be very effective, regardless of, we're sitting in front of somebody. Sometimes people show up and they're in their car, or they're walking down the street in, Vancouver or something like that, or they're, sitting outside a coffee shop or whatever it is. And I find that it can be just as valuable, despite the limitations. And so my question really is along the lines of, especially being a medium, because that's not my wheelhouse. And we still you have a similar framework in business as I do, or as we do, but like what's that like for you, the connection piece? How has that changed for you from, when you do it digitally versus doing it in person?
Something I had to send out was a protocol of like, I need you to do these things for me so that I can do my best job. Meaning I can't have you babysitting your kids in the background. You can't be outside, with the lawnmower going. I can't have you walking down the street in Vancouver or being in a coffee shop. So I had to be, very like, okay, if you want a good sit, it's got to be cookie cutter like this. I need you in an enclosed room. I need you to have a strong Wi-Fi connection. Don't do this with your phone. I'm dizzy, like I need a solid surface, and, be prepared that you make it emotional. So, have your tissues ready, but also don't be afraid to look at yourself as well, because something I noticed right away is people were holding back their tears more because they could see themselves. And it was almost like a look of disgust that they could be emotional. And so I would encourage them, maybe just turn off your camera for a minute and just allow yourself to go there. But also being prepared, setting it up as if it was, in person, but make yourself comfortable in your own space. The biggest obstacle I faced is keeping people's attention. I do notice that when people are online, their attention span's a lot shorter, meaning they get distracted quite a bit quicker. And when they're in person, I feel like I got them. Like they have nowhere to be, their phone's off, you're with me. And so being able to recreate that online has taken a little bit of effort and some practice. But I also found that now that I'm getting into my rhythm and people know what to expect and how to prepare for it, that we can tap into it really quick, really fast, and get straight to work. Because my work is fast. Like, it does speed up when I start to talk, and working with the spirit world is a very high frequency and stuff like that. So it's just, I need everything to be set in place to be able to sustain a good connection and reading. Well.
Brilliant. Yeah, I know from personal experience working with you, as I have had an experience as your client, right? If we want to call it that, and you get in the zone, right? And you're just going from a position of and this would be better for you to explain, but from my experience of going from a position of not knowing, like you're being given the information to transmit through your energy system, and I can imagine how draining that is. Like it's a constant stream of information that doesn't belong to you. It's being guided through you, or hence the medium. And I've witnessed that, and your voice changes, and you get really, so it makes sense that, if somebody is on their phone, or there's a pop-up on the screen that comes, and the person like disconnects, and then the connection between you and that person is dismantled in some ways. And when we're connecting to the spirit world, it's almost like not my wheelhouse, right? So just say from my perspective, but it's disrespectful to what's being provided, and the energetic release that is required for providing that. And so I can see how that takes practice on the side of the listener, and it's like remembering like why we're here, and recognizing that there is actually, to me, it might be different for others listening, but to me, when you're in an important appointment or meeting, nothing else really for me exists. So while I'm talking to you, I'm aware that there are things going on around me in the world, but I am here in this enclosed room with no, I'm sure the phone is ringing, or there's 1,000 text messages coming through, or emails, and like I'm sure of that, but it's not relevant. What's relevant is just the connection right now, because all that can wait. And so I just want to say, from a client's perspective of having had a session with you, I recognize that there's like your whole being becomes the energy you are providing to that person via the spiritual connection or guides that you have. So I'm grateful for that, and I can understand why it's really important that these people you're working with are able to connect to you and allow the space for you.
Absolutely. And I always tell my clients it takes three. It takes me, it takes you, and it takes the spirit world. And it's all equal, And so, if I have your 100% undivided attention, and you allow me to move into that space of complete and utter focus, those messages can get fed through me. But I need us to be fully connected in order for that to happen. So if a person's sitting like this and they're checking their phone like this, I mean, you've cut me in half. So now I'm going to be a half channel, right? And so it's like, it's up to you. How good of a sitting do you really want? And it's like, if we're all willing to work together and, move into that energy in that space, because you go into an altered state as well when you sit in a reading, because it starts to take you in as well. So you can see and feel that presence of spirit moving in. And so I believe that's the miracle in all of it as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm very, very grateful. And, for what I was provided with in that meeting that we had so long ago, it was years ago at this point, I think, and in looking forward to greater connection with you as time goes on. Is there anything that, in terms of like, we're talking to viewers who come from all ages, all different backgrounds, so I want to figure out how to ask this question, but a lot of people have had to transition over to their, working digitally. And some people are saying, well, this is great. I don't know if I want to go back to the office anymore. And they're finding their flow. And more often than not, I think that's happening because people are practicing this. They were forced into this, and now they're having to, practice this. But my question is along the lines of perhaps speaking to those who are practicing that, who are maybe not finding their flow so well, and they're struggling with like how to do the digital thing. And it doesn't even have to be just business owners or people in private practice. It could be people who are trying to be clients of people trying to transition over. And I guess in a roundabout way, trying to ask this question as specifically as possible, but do you have any thoughts or guidance for people who are undergoing this process like you have, in terms of like what they can be doing to better support themselves now being totally digital? Because although that will change and we'll be allowed to go back in the world, we don't know when that's going to be. BC anyways has this 4-phase plan, and we're entering into phase 2 on May 18th. But that being said, That doesn't mean that, oh, everything's going to be hunky-dory after May 18th. That just means that we're going to try it.
Yeah.
But this idea of a second wave, and like, the truth is that I think this is going to go on a lot longer than people might anticipate. And the recovery from this will be years down the road. So I think the digital requirement to run businesses and work from home, I think it's monumental, and it's central. It's not really going anywhere. I don't think, in fact, even after we're allowed to go back in the world, say permanently go back in the world, like after phase 4, for example, I would be very surprised if many of us who have now learned how to do this effectively decide to go back and just be in the physical presence of others. So yeah, I think that's the best way. Is, do you have any guidance for people who are struggling with this, as they try and work online or be clients online, based on your overall experience?
Well, first I want to mention that, we were all sent home and we were all put to our rooms, and it's almost like we've been put in isolation. And in that stillness, we're able to find ourselves. So we're able to decide for ourselves and know within ourselves if this is going to work or not. We're also able to meet some of the blocks within ourselves, because a lot of things I noticed with some of my students and clients is that because it feared them, they didn't want to adapt, right? And so helping people adapt and push over and help them move through those barriers of fear, and now seeing them 7-8 weeks later and they're like totally savvy online. It was neat to see that transition of that, as well as thinking and assuming, nope, not for me, I don't like this, and now seeing that they have to adapt. That it's been great to watch. But also, it's neat to also ask yourself, when you're alone and you don't have friends to compare to, does this work for me? Yes or no? And for some people it's no, I'm an extrovert, or I prefer, tactile, I'm more of a feeler. I will go back to work. I do want to work with people again, and just being fully accepting of that. But there's also people who are highly intuitive, highly sensitive, very introverted, that this is a more, congruent way for them to work. So also accepting that works for them. I believe it's like when you're going to be forced to be online all of a sudden all the time. So I'm thinking about the children who used to being in classrooms and now they're having to do school online. A lot of them are finding that they're getting bored really quick, and that they need more social interaction to keep them stimulated. And so for that, I would recommend, if you can, to go outside and to get back to nature and be able to feel things like the grass, the earth beneath you, the trees, be able to take a walk down your road if it's possible. Because I believe what they're missing in the virtual type of world is that physical touch and connection to something greater than themselves as well. And I do notice if I spend more than 4 hours online doing sessions back to back, I'm like, oh my God, like, do I even live on this planet anymore? I got to go outside and I got to touch things and I got to come back to earth and just allow myself to ground and really coming in. So I believe the big thing is balance and not losing touch with this reality, because I believe it's a huge gift to be able to be here now as a physical being.
I agree with that. Yeah. And you were saying before we hit record, like this idea of how we can get lost in the digital, right? And we're online all day, and believe me, I've done back-to-back sessions for numerous hours, and then when I get up from this chair, it's amazing that there's this whole world around me that is untouched for hours and hours. And so reconnecting to that and reconnecting to nature, it's been quite challenging, right? And I used to have an office to go to, right? So I would go to that office and still work digitally from that office, but I would see people. And now that's not the case. The office doesn't exist anymore. And so it's like when I go and reconnect, it's oftentimes in the backyard, and I just go and stand in the backyard. Or like yesterday, I was able to lay in the sun for a little while, and it was rejuvenating for sure. But then, even outside of the house, there's this whole world that's untouched. And so going for hikes and it's so fulfilling. So finding that balance is really valuable. And so I'm excited to continue to explore what that means for me, because I don't completely know. I think like the first few weeks of the pandemic was very difficult. There's lots of loss in that. And it was, I would say, it started to get easier, like I was saying, like eight days ago. And from that 8 days, then the loss seems to have leveled. which is great. But that was a month
Mhm.
or so or more of loss there. And so now there's a leveling. Now I can finally tap more into what does balance mean, because it was a bit of a struggle to find balance during that time, because you have grief also. So not only do you have all the challenges that you faced before the pandemic showed up, the pandemic now shows up, and in some ways it can compound all those things you were trying to overcome. And in some ways it makes it easier, because I didn't have a choice to attend certain appointments anymore. Like, everything was canceled. And so I think for now that the grief is, and I'm not suggesting the grief is not going to come and go, because grief comes in waves, but now it feels easier. But it was a storm in all in itself, the grief. So moving through that and coming out to a place where I'm in utter acceptance of what has taken place, and saying, okay, so I accept that this has happened. I can't change any of these things. Now what? Look forward and be curious and be observant, and with no control. Right? This is what I can do with what's in front of me, and that's the best I can do. So balance has been hard to achieve, and I would still suggest I haven't necessarily achieved it. I think that balance is ever flowing, just like health and recovery and being human is ever flowing. And around the corner there's going to be another challenge that shows up, and I don't know what that is. So all I know is right now I'm stable.
Yeah.
Right? And our stability will be challenged along the way, big time. So balance is really important. I completely agree, but it's a consistent practice and finding, right?
And the unknown is being able to sit in that unknown, because the number one question I receive is, when's this over, Nicole? Like, am I going to get COVID? And it's just
Right.
like, so I say, because, I am a medium, I communicate with the spirit world, and we do bring through messages, but a lot of it is, potentials for the future, but also messages for right now, and what is important right now, and what do you need to know in this moment, and how can this help you move forward. And I believe, having the unknown of when this is going to end, but also connecting with intuition is, what is your body telling you? Is what are you feeling for this? Because I know for myself, even though they're opening up the second phase next weekend, still my intuition's going, no, I'm not ready yet. And so being able to trust that and feel that in for myself, and be able to make my own decisions based on that, without even knowing why or getting attached to why I feel that way, right? It's like, even with summer, I know not to make any plans, and I go, I don't know why I feel that, but I have to trust it. And same with the fall and things like that. And being able to help other people sit with the unknown and connect back into what's important in this moment.
And that ties back into the gift of this.
Yes.
That even though this was not what we had planned, not what we wanted, we have this opportunity for rest.
Yeah.
That's such a great thing, because when we go and we're not tapped into our own awareness or our own feelings, or just even the state of our bodies, the health of our bodies, we're this, like, sometimes we treat our bodies like we're machines, and we go nonstop until we become exhausted, and then we get upset that we're exhausted. It's like, our bodies have limits, right? So being able to be forced into looking at that. And I think that's tough for some people, because they haven't had to do that before. They're always filling their time or filling their energy or avoiding their feelings. And so we're saying, here, now you have all this time to take a look at what's actually happening for you, to actually get to know you as a human, because you give yourself away to all these other humans, and now, like, who are you? And that's a big thing that happens, is that I hear people say, well, I don't even know who I am. And that's a great tie-in to why people are struggling so much. I don't know what to do with this. I have so much anxiety, and I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And it's now it's saying, okay, well, you don't have to do anything. You just be aware of what's happening around you, and recognize what you can do within it, and let go of what you can't, and be able to just witness that. But it's tough, I'm finding, for people to be able to sit in that unknown. There's quite a struggle there, and lots of emotion. And then, like, why am I being so emotional? I don't understand this. I'm not usually an emotional person. this has just like thrown my life into the gutter. I've heard people say that. And I
Yeah.
say, well, this is brilliant what's happening, because it's forcing you to take a look at what you actually need in ways that you didn't realize before.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. I keep calling this year my sabbatical, because it's like, you know, if you think about people in their professions and they give a lot of output, teach classes, and then they take a
Yep.
year sabbatical, what do? They write books, they focus on, you know, things that they've been meaning to do for years and years and years. So I have been trying to take advantage of that and spending more time writing and doing intuitive art and stuff like that. So ways that I can give back to my own spirit and be able to process my emotions as they come through as well.
Mm-hmm. So, Nicole, I'm wondering too, I always like to ask the personal questions too. Like this video cast is not just about business or how we're doing, you know, financially, or but also how we're doing in soul. And although you've touched on that, but I wonder personally for you, outside of your business, what has this been like? You're saying you and your husband are cooking, and you're getting connected more in that way. But is there anything else that you want to share about the struggle and or triumphs in the pandemic personally?
Self-responsibility, for sure, is recognizing that I'm in charge of my own happiness. And when I create a routine for myself and stick to it, that I find that I'm actually able to get more done in a day, spend more time in happiness, as well as not get caught up in maybe my negative emotions as well. I realize I can't spend hours watching the news or scrolling Facebook and seeing all the different opinions of conspiracies and things like that. I find that I have to pull back. And as much as people are recommending that they reach out, I've noticed that I've had to retract quite a bit and find my own space and my own answers as well. So it's been a struggle in that sense of just recognizing where I'm at and being okay with it, and allowing myself this alone time without being in full isolation, I think is one way of putting it. And I've also had to encourage myself to be creative with writing and art and stuff like that. And sometimes it can feel like a chore, but I've forced myself to be able to stay in that place so that I can allow my emotions to flow through, because I do find the emotions get quite intense. And I do have to encourage myself to get dressed up in the morning. And, I try and still set an alarm so that I get up at 8 o'clock. And so I'm not sleeping in until 10 and missing half my day and go to bed at 2 in the morning. Because, that would have been, I would be back in high school if I was going to do that again. Right. So a lot of it's just taking charge and taking control of what I can control in my life and letting go of what I can't.
Yeah. And I can really relate to that also in my own life. As I talked in previous videos maybe weeks ago about how I did fall into this pattern of staying up till 2 and binge watching TV and like get into my favorite show or whatever that is at the time, and then not setting alarm. And I wake up at I have a body clock, I'll wake up at 7 or 6:30 and sometimes earlier. And I'm like, wow, it's like really early and I don't have to get up right now. So I'm going to go back to sleep. And so I would go back to sleep until 11 o'clock or something. And it's like, well, I feel rested, but it's 11 o'clock. Like normally I am at the office by 8:30 in the morning and it's already almost lunchtime. So I had to take a look at that and say, okay, is this, like, asking myself, just like you said earlier, does this work for me? Right. And how easy it was to fall into that. And I said, like, no, it doesn't. I think that once in a while, things in moderation, like it's not that big of a deal if I sleep in one day. Like, to me, it's not, it's okay sometimes, but as a general rule for my life, it wasn't. But I found that if I didn't do anything to intervene, I was getting really, like, it likely, and I say this from past experience in my life, it likely would have continued, the trend would have continued, and I would have, now it's 3 o'clock before I'm going to sleep, and now it's, 1 o'clock in the afternoon by the time I actually get out of bed, and it's just, it didn't fit for my, whatever purpose I might be tapping into that day. So yeah, I had to actually turn it around and start, perhaps setting an alarm or or when I wake up at 7 to stay up. And then by the time, 10 o'clock comes around, I'm tired,
Yeah.
rightly so. And then I go to bed at 10 o'clock or, 11 o'clock instead of 3 o'clock in the morning. And I found that there's been a nice flow there. It's been really effective. And so along those lines, I'm hearing that you said balance. It's really important to tap into what is true for us, actually getting to know ourselves, being able to adhere to that. I often say, it's really valuable from my perspective to show up unapologetically in your truth.
Yeah.
But in your truth in such a way that is not harmful to those around you. Also being able to connect in soul and spirit. And if somebody doesn't connect with that, that's okay. So the balance piece, but also, and you said self-responsibility too. And being able to check in, like, does this work? And if it doesn't, even though I might feel more comfortable going to sleep at 2 and waking up later, there's a lack of personal responsibility that comes in there, because I'm just like, go with the flow, like whatever, but I fall into a pattern that isn't healthy for me. And so having to purposely turn that around and take personal responsibility is what I've been doing over the last number of weeks, and it's been effective. But it wasn't overnight either. It was like, wow, and on one side, in essence, we might say my ego was like, whatever, this is fine. Like, you can,
pandemic.
Yeah, you're an adult. You can do whatever you want. You don't have anywhere to be, and all of that. And I had to actually challenge that and say, I get that, but I don't want to abuse it. This freedom, because I'm feeling more depressed now when I wake up at 11. My day's half over, and it's not what I want for my life, right? So that's been my experience of taking personal responsibility and how it's been challenging. But we're at a point now. I say we, as in like me and whatever spirit guides I have. We're at a point where it's like, okay, it's working better. But I think it's also watching the grief cycle and understanding what it might be trying to teach me.
Absolutely. I feel there's a big difference of avoiding my emotions and when do I have to sit with this? You know what I mean? So it's like, am I going to keep slotting things in appointment times, or am I going to take 2 hours and actually maybe even schedule in 2 hours to be with myself, right? And being self-employed, you learn really quickly, I can either create my own schedule and stick to it and develop that routine, or I could just totally slide in and just maybe not be so successful. So there is a lot of responsibility being an entrepreneur as well, too. You don't get to show up for somebody else in their office 20 minutes late. I mean, we are our own business, so people are seeing if we're integral, if we are showing up on time, we are doing what we say we're going to do, walking the talk, being the role model for it, and actually living the life. And are we dishing it out, and we giving it to ourselves as well, right?
I will say, and then we might need to, might be a natural place to close, and we can kind of wrap up in a bit. But I will say, the last time I saw you, I remember we talked about energy, right? And you, how you embrace the energy, and then you give the energy, right? And what that means for you. And I can say that, and I haven't actually seen you in a few years, but what I can say is I can speak to the difference in your energy, your energetic presence here, as opposed to, or in reference to when I saw you last a few years ago. And so it seems to me that, like, everything you're saying about how you're now having more time for yourself and finding that flow, and even 2 years ago, I'll speak for myself here, but I was still working out what that balance was, and how to show up energetically in a healthy way. We can try and put our energy on the table, but if we're not well, like, it can be seen by others, right? And I think that that's not to suggest you weren't. I think you were, but the energy availability here, even just virtually, is really brilliant. Like, it's really, really cool. And I can tell, I guess the point of this, I can tell that this is working for you.
Amazing. That's really good to see.
That makes sense, right? Yeah. So that's amazing. So it's about practicing what we preach, showing up, leading by example, and not being a hypocrite about anything that we're putting out there. Absolutely. And I do believe, in knowing you for as long as I have, that you do show up in a way that works, and you're not it actually takes more energy to lie and to be in a place that's not truthful for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I find so it's easier to just show up as our unapologetic selves and saying like, this is what I can do and this is what I can't do. And but I definitely see that your digital presence here, and it wasn't even digital when I saw you before, but your digital presence is really solid. And that allows us, like you were saying before, when we are in tune with ourselves and we are rested and our self-care is high or great, we are able to be abundantly available.
Absolutely. And it feels
Right.
good, it's almost like I'm so full, I have all this to give to serve our community, right? Which, the
Mm-hmm.
other end, I always say I don't want to compare myself to the burned out nurse or something like that, because when you walk into the ER and they're snappy with you, it's like, I don't get mad at them. I just go, oh my gosh, she really needs
Yeah.
a break. And I know if I start to get snappy or short, it's like, I'm not filling my own cup and doing enough self-care right now. And that
Mm-hmm.
person doesn't deserve that, right? And so
Yeah.
giving that love back to self, or that compassion back to self as well, 100%. And I just want to touch on what we were talking about we're conserving energy for mediumship, because it is a little
Mm-hmm.
bit different than doing, like say energy work where the energy flows through you.
Sure.
When you work as a medium, you have to build your personal power. And so you sit in, which is called sitting in the power meditation, and you allow yourself to build that connection with the spirit world and build your energy. And it's almost like you charge your battery full. So when you start to work as a medium, all that power that you built up for the session does start to kind of go down. And so you have to make sure that that charge button is full. If you start to work and that charge button's low, that's when you start getting into the thinking mind, when it starts coming from me, when I start kind of going back and forth and not really making
Mm-hmm.
sense anymore. And that's when you can feel the inauthenticity of maybe the connection with the spirit world as well. So always making sure that I have enough generated personal power to be able to sustain that connection with spirit.
Mm-hmm. And that's you taking responsibility for your work, for the benefit of those you serve.
Yeah.
Right. If we're showing up and we're, there are times where I show up in session and I'm, I'm a little bit more tired, or I might be a little sick, but I tell them, I say, this is what's happening for me. And sometimes if I'm too far gone and I really need to rest, I will make that clear and, move people around or whatever. But I love that you take your craft so seriously, that you are prepping yourself for each visit and understanding how long your battery can go, because it's in essence you unplug the charger when you start your sessions, right? And you have to know how long that's going to go for, and you become quite skilled at that, right? So and I appreciate that from practitioner to practitioner, although we're in different fields in so many ways. I appreciate that because clients deserve that,
I do.
right?
And I've had beautiful mentors and teachers in the past that were not afraid to call me out on it. And my biggest lesson in all of this is, unapologetically myself, like you said, and not people pleasing. So being completely honest with, can I do this or not? Can I do this? And so unfortunately I had to learn that the hard way.
Right.
So I like to think now,
Well,
it's like, thank you for saying that, because I feel that this is something I've worked so hard at to sustain and be good at as well.
wow. Well, I'm grateful for that. So Nicole, is this an okay place for us to close, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up here, I'm just wondering if you can put, this might be a bit challenging, but can you put, a bow on the nature of this conversation for you and for any listeners, any guidance or support, words of support, for what they can be doing to help them brave the storm or improve their, their mental health or their life systems, in what they cannot change in this pandemic.
Yeah, so definitely take control of what you can control. So, if it's your own meditation practice or yoga practice or going for a walk every day, make sure that you take control of that and allow yourself that time to fill it. Make sure you create balance in your work. So if you're online virtually, make sure you're getting outside enough to touch the physical earth and reconnect to the physical nature. I feel that that's allowing to be able to give back to self. Being really honest with where you're at and accepting it. And, if you need an off day, give yourself an off day. You don't have to be on all the time as well. And I really feel that self-responsibility piece of we have to choose happiness as a way of life, and happiness can be a practice, and same with authenticity. So making sure you're doing things that are true to you and help you heal as well. So we want to be able to make sure that we're taking responsibility for our lives and not handing it over to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. I absolutely stand beside everything you just said. And so if people want to contact you directly, perhaps to explore the services that you provide, or perhaps people just want to ask you some questions based on the video they saw, are they able to do that?
Yes, absolutely. Anyone's obviously can go to my website, www.nicolepowell.ca. It has my services page and comment sections. And so feel free to, if you wanted to ask me a question about anything, or if you wanted to book an appointment, that would be the best place to reach me. And also my Facebook page, my business page, Nicole Powell Spiritual Medium. And I do try and stay up to date on there, posting, and it's my great way to be able to stay in touch with clients and friends that I meet around the world. And you're welcome to send me a message in the messenger box as well as there too.
Oh, excellent. And of course, if I have anybody who does come forward with us and wants to connect with you, I'll forward that correspondence to you if for whatever reason they come through us. But we'll also post your Facebook and your website on the write-up too, and then people can just click on those links to get directly connected to you. So for me, this was really it's layered for me. What this video was like for me. The interviews I have with people are very different. I have a different plethora of feelings that come from that. I've known you for a long time now, and actually you're one of the I would say in the first year of moving to the island I had met you, and so I've now been on the island for that period of time, and it's just it's really great to reconnect with you in this capacity when normally like we don't, we have texting, or I see your stuff on Facebook. And we live in similar areas on the island, and I kind of move around the island, but it was really lovely. I mean, I think that's the best, heartfelt. I find there's a warm energy that came from our visit today. Very, very lovely, and excitement too to be able to maintain that connection. I find that sometimes space and time, it doesn't need to be this way, but space and time can kind of cause people to be like, oh well, haven't talked to that person in years, I'm just going to leave it. But I love reestablishing those connections, and just I think having your presence in my life personally has been a gift to me, and and so really great that you were willing to come forward and have the chat with me, and helpful for hopefully some of our viewers too.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I just love being able to connect with you in this way, and I just really appreciate your consistency and this connection as well. So thank you for just being in my life.
Yeah, awesome. And then I'll definitely be seeing you in June, and then we can correspond in the other way, and perhaps when we're allowed to be in contact again with other humans, we could actually connect over. We've done a coffee before, and we can connect again in that way, or connect with nature or whatever we want. But it's an important connection I'm feeling. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I lost volume. I lost the volume on you, so I can't hear you.
And tell us that there's something coming out of it for you. That is okay, because what we're interested in is that our words and grace can be shared across the masses, whether we hear about it or not. That's really important. So thank you so much, Nicole, for your time, and I'll be in touch at some point.
Absolutely. Thank you, Amanda.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.